Welcome to the KOMO Sports End Zone podcast with KOMO Sports Director Niko Tamurian and Najee Moye.
Welcome to the KOMO Sports End Zone podcast, special edition, rapid reaction to that 2024 Seahawks schedule. Joining me as always, my partner here, Najee Moye. Najee, how you doing, man?
Niko, it's like Christmas in spring. Mist. It's spring mist. This is the game. This is the day that all football fans, pro football fans, have been waiting for since the draft, which was not that long ago, actually.
No, but
yeah,
you bring up a great point here because we've known the opponents for the Seahawks since the end of last season, right? You know, the NFL slates that out every year. The only thing that's up in the air is, you know, depending on your placement in a division, then you play in other leagues, you know, placement team and sort of that sort of thing. And that doesn't get resolved until the end of the regular season. But now, if you look at all of this, it's one of those things that, okay, we know the dates, we know the times, and we know there's going to be 4 primetime games this year. That's going to be a lot of fun to check out. And I think ultimately what it comes down to is, even if you know the opponents, right now, the order of it makes everything. Remember that gauntlet when the Hawks had last year? It was the Niners twice, the Cowboys, the Rams, the Eagles, like all these teams back to back to back to back. And so the order of it, when the games are, where they are, all that sort of thing can be a huge difference.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing if you're playing a team that made it to the Super Bowl last year, for example. But if you're playing maybe 5 straight teams or, 3 or 4 straight teams that were postseason teams, that were playoff teams in a row at the end of your year. Think about that. Now, we know how different the NFL can be from year to year. We've seen teams go from a very high to very low, just with almost the same roster. You just never know how things can go. But now we know, and now you can even block off some dates in your calendar. Like I know I definitely will. Just taking a glance at this schedule. But I'm excited. And honestly, I think Seahawks fans should be excited too. But that being said, this is going to be a bit of a headache.
Yeah. Before I bring this thing up on the screen here, do you have a game you're like, you look at it, you're like, okay, that's going to be a fun one?
As I look at the schedule?
Yeah. Well, I'll start to give you a second.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I like the Dolphins in week 3.
Okay.
So I think they're a much improved team. I think that we know all about their offense, and this is not a knock on the Broncos or Patriots, but I think the first real test for that new era Mike McDonald defense will be in week 3 against the Dolphins. It's here at Lumen Field, September 22nd. I can't wait for it.
I cannot wait for the Buffalo game.
Yeah, that'll be good.
Yeah, October 27th is here at Lumen Field. Buffalo coming from across the country, as far as the most northeasterly team playing against the most northwesterly team. That is a team now. Buffalo is looking different this year, at least on the offensive side, because they don't have Stephon Diggs. That being said, they're still a strong team. Still Josh Allen, who's honestly probably the strongest quarterback next to Jalen Hurts, actually.
Yeah.
But that's going to be a quality game.
Well, yeah, and you bring up a great
October,
point.
It's going to start to mean something at that point too.
Absolutely, and you bring up a great point about a quarterback of Josh Allen's stature coming to town. It's always going to be a fun football game to watch. Last year, we got to see Jalen Hurts up close and personal. We saw the Hawks play at the Chiefs a couple years ago, but it wasn't this year, or they wasn't here at Lumen Field. So, from that respect, it'll be cool to see Josh Allen here. I agree with that. Listen, ultimately the most meaningful games are going to be those conference matchups.
Right.
But I'm picking the Dolphins game. You're picking the Bills game. Sometimes it's really cool to see those teams that we don't get to see here every year in the Pacific Northwest, or maybe it's been a few years, that sort of thing. I mean, ultimately you're going to see every team every few years, but it's a little more rare and a little more interesting because you kind of know, okay, the Seahawks are trying to build themselves to be better than the Niners, right?
Right.
So you know what you're going to get in that game. You don't know if you're going to win, but you know the matchup. It's just really, it's almost like in college football, and it really is. You're playing out of conference, NFC, AFC, but it's almost like those first few weeks of the college football season when you get these cool games, Clemson, Georgia, those kind of games.
Those are fun games.
The Huskies at Michigan or Michigan State, if you want to make it more local, or
the
Cougs against Wisconsin, that kind of stuff. It's just, I think that's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And
it's gonna be a fun season, and it's gonna be a really fun season, especially considering, we talk about the gauntlet that the Hawks went through last year towards the end of the year, trying to make it into the playoffs and what they had to go through. We haven't put up the schedule yet, but I'm expecting big things from some of the teams that the Hawks play towards the end of the year.
Let's bring it up.
Yeah, let's go ahead and pull it up. Let's look at this together as a family, you guys. Again, week 1, home Broncos.
Just like 2022, except without Russ.
Without Russ, which I think will still be a good game. Honestly, I think it's a great warm up game. We don't really know what the Broncos will have. We know they don't have much,
Right.
But I think it'll be good. I think the first 2 games, September 8th, home against the Broncos, on the road against the Patriots. Again, the Patriots just took a quarterback in their first round pick. We don't really know what they have, but when you're playing against a rookie quarterback, I'm almost assuming Drake May is going to be the starter. I'm not going to say the Hawks are starting 2-0, but it's looking great.
It would be almost a surprise if they didn't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what I think about this with the Broncos game, assuming Bo Nix wins the job, it's a big assumption, but is he going to lose again in Seattle? He just can't seem to win here.
He can't. Yeah, he hates it here, man. I'm sure he hates it here. Going a little bit further, you mentioned that Dolphins game, Niko.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
About that. That's a fast offense. That's a fast offense. I think the Dolphins are slated for great things. I'm going to predict that they win the AFC East this year.
Really? Yeah, that could happen.
So.
I think so. They're on the rise. It's almost like when the Bills eventually rose to meet the Patriots, and then the Patriots on the fall. Now maybe the Bills are declining a little bit. I mean, I don't want to say that they are, but you never know. They certainly have plateaued.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that'd be interesting, no question. And then you got the Monday Night Football game at Detroit. That's a big one.
This is, you asked me at the beginning of this podcast what game I was really excited for. The Buffalo game, obviously, but this Detroit team last year was phenomenal. They paid a bunch of people. They paid Jared Goff this past week. This is a team that is ready for a Super Bowl.
I agree.
It's gonna be tough. It's gonna be very, very tough. Monday Night Football against the Lions in Detroit, which will be fun.
They were so close to going to the big one, as you mentioned, and I think Detroit almost became like America's sweetheart a little bit.
Everyone was rooting for Detroit
after that Hard Knocks. Everybody loves Dan Campbell, and they've seen this team rise under his watch. We know that they were very good last year. The Seahawks, despite not having a great year, went to Detroit and won early in the year in overtime. Tyler Lockett getting the big touchdown,
right?
And it's an interesting look, a measuring stick, right? I think it's something that if you really, look at that game, that can be the first real test, because look at 2 weeks later, you see it there. You have a Thursday night home game against the Niners, not to skip over your Giants.
No, skip. You can go ahead.
But, listen, 3 of those first 4 of those first 6 games rather are at home. Right. And, you want to talk about degree of difficulty. The Niners, the Lions, and Dolphins are going to be, on paper, some of the toughest games you'll see.
I mean, you can honestly say that the Hawks may be 500 by the time they get to October 20th, by the time they get to week 7. Now, that being said, the Hawks did beat the Giants last year. And I want to go out on a limb and say I'm going to be at that game in Lumen Field.
Go for it.
Yeah, 100%.
You were there when they came here a couple years ago, right?
Yeah, I was definitely here. And the Giants always play tough, obviously. Defense is next level. The offense, again, we're bringing Daniel Jones back. Leave something to be desired. We'll see how Malik Neighbors transforms our offense, how all the auditions on the offensive line help. I think it'll be a fun game. I think that'll be a closer game than last year. I do still think the Hawks will win.
Yeah.
And I'll be sad and crying. I'll be crying and crying.
It's interesting. We talked about a 2-0 start, maybe even a 3-1 start.
Possible.
Something like that. Yeah. Boy, it could be 3-3 after 6 though, because there's 3 really tough teams in there.
That Lions game is going to be a shootout. I mean, we look at the potential of what that Orion Grove offense can do. We saw it at UW, and we will see it now with professional football players, and Geno Smith having another year under center as the guy in Seattle. Yeah. I think it'll be great. I think that September 30th game is going to be a shootout, and I think it'll be a great. You mentioned the measuring stick game. I mean, we got the Giants in between, but look at the Niners. I mean,
yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And I think
on a Thursday night.
And here's what I love about the NFL schedule. I mean, they had no idea Michael Penix was going to the Falcons, right? I mean, but it'd be even bigger if the Falcons were here, I suppose. But that road game at the Falcons suddenly means a little bit more, especially if Penix takes the reins at quarterback from Kirk Cousins.
You think he will?
It's very possible.
That's a lot of money to be throwing at Kirk Cousins just to have Michael Penix, which I love. And I'm still, it's been weeks since the draft. I'm still shaking my head about why the Falcons drafted Michael Penix so high, first of all, whether you could have gotten him in the second round after giving Kirk Cousins, who I think is a great quarterback. As a Giants fan, I'd love to have him, a small fortune to be their quarterback. It's so baffling to me, but I'm sure Michael Penix will show the Falcons and the fans in the league why he deserves to be a professional football player and a starter in the league right now.
Yeah, and that'll be interesting to see. And then after that, you get some two huge home games leading into the bye. The Bills game you mentioned, the Rams obviously much improved last year.
Very much improved.
Yeah, and so it becomes just a unique listen, you look at this schedule and you can objectively say, okay, there's stretches. Like I look at the last 6 games, not to jump ahead necessarily, but listen, the Cardinals, okay, they're still trying to figure it out. The Jets, perpetually trying to figure it out. Who knows what the Vikings are going to look like, right? The Bears, I
think the Bears are much improved.
They've got more weapons, that's for sure. It's hard to say. And then you finish out on the road in LA, and it's just an interesting proposition because I look at this and it's like, yeah, this team, the Seahawks can go to the playoffs and schedule, but we also don't know a ton about this team yet.
It's very difficult to say, and I'll say this really quickly. One of my two of my very good coworkers, Kevin Beatty, also known as Producer Doom, from pointed out to me, I didn't even realize this, that 4 of the last 6 games are on the road.
Yeah, they are.
That's tough.
It is difficult.
You imagine you go into Chicago in December, you go into New York in December, and also Taylor Coelho, who's a web producer here, mentioned he thinks, and he wants me to go on record with saying this, and I kind of agree with this.
Right.
The Rams may sweep the Hawks this year.
Yeah, they very well could.
They very well could, because they're a much improved team, and the team they're actually trending up towards the end of last year. But we just look at the schedule, and we think back to last year. I know we talked about this on this podcast, where the bye week is.
Yeah.
Remember where the bye week was last
year?
Very early. Very, very early. Now we're about at the middle of the season, which is ideally what you want. But there's is in between the two tough divisional foes in the Rams and the Niners. The first time for the Rams, second time for the Niners. It's a good time for a bye week. Let me just tell you that.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And I look at this schedule and it's just it's full of fun games. Divisional games are always fun, right? And then these non-conference teams, I think, are fun ones to look at as well.
Right. I think when you look at the schedule, you look at teams like Buffalo, the teams like the Jets, who on paper should have a good offense, and Aaron Rodgers can stay upright. Green Bay, a team on Sunday night, by the way, at home here, which would be great. But this Packers team was trending up.
I agree.
There's a lot of teams on the schedule that were trending up towards the end of last year. Even the Bears with a different quarterback. They were not awful last year.
Yeah,
they were actually trying
to
badge. I think Hawks fans should be excited. I think now is the time to plot what games you want to see. But that being said, they're playing a lot of teams that were trending up towards the end of last year. The Packers were in the playoffs. We don't know what the Vikings have really, but the Bears. I'm looking at towards the end of the year when you're trying to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
And it makes me a little nervous.
I agree. Yeah. Let's take another look at this thing here.
Yeah.
I think it's really silly to try and say like, oh, the Hawks are going to go 10-7 on this slate, because you just don't know anything about anybody right now. I mean, generalities, I suppose, but we've only seen these guys in shorts and jerseys with rookies. I mean, minicamp does begin next week, which is cool.
Right.
But ultimately, I mean, you look at all of this and we just don't know,
you can still make deductions based upon last year.
For sure.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
Which is what I am doing right now.
So what are you going to say? Do you have a record in mind?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
I'll say, I'd really have to look at this. I see.
Because we look at a lot of teams that have really strong, powerful offenses. I mentioned the Packers. I mentioned the Dolphins. The Niners are probably. I'm gonna pick them to make it back to the Super Bowl again this year, because I just don't see why not.
Yeah.
Anytime when you have to play the Rams and Niners twice a year, I mean, who knows who knows? The Cardinals may be a lot better than people may say.
You never know.
That's the thing. That's kind of to your point before. This schedule is not an easy schedule.
Definitely not.
It is not an easy schedule. That's the biggest highlight I can think of. Because only a few of these teams were under 500 last year. I'm looking at you, the Giants. Looking at you, the Cardinals.
I just figured it out in my head, and we can make fun of me.
I don't think we should
months.
but we shouldn't like.
No, you know what?
I mean, you don't have to go on record right now. The schedule came out.
Hang on.
Real time about 48 minutes ago.
They're gonna go 11-6.
Wow.
Yeah. They're gonna start 4-2. They're gonna pick off one. They're gonna do a mild upset, so to speak. Maybe not even an upset of either Miami, the Lions, or Niners, and win those the 3 winnables, if you call it. That middle stretch, if you're looking at the schedule on the screen here,
right,
they're going to go 2-3. And then so you're talking a 65 record.
Right.
But then I think they're going to finish the season hot. Mike McDonald's system's going to be in. The guys are going to be clicking, and they're going to win 5 of the last 6.
But I look at that last game against the Rams, and I look at that's a divisional game. The time is TBA.
Maybe even
flex,
and I'll accept a 10-7,
right?
Because you might lose that Rams game on the road is going to be really tough, presumably for one of the teams at least playoff implications.
I just think about weather wise. You look at December 26th in Chicago, New York. I mean, these are hard places to play.
Yeah.
In December, not saying that Seattle in December is a cakewalk. It's definitely not. No. But there's a lot here.
I'll never forget December 26th of 2021. The Bears came here.
Right.
And it was a snow bowl. And the Seahawks were kind of done as far as the playoffs were concerned anyway. But they had that game won, and then the Bears scored a late touchdown, got a 2-point conversion, and like won it. It was like shocking. But yeah. So I'm gonna conservatively, I'll say 10-7.
I just think, and it's so funny because you just mere minutes ago were like, well, we can't really look at this. We can't really think about records. We can't really.
And then I just did it.
Well, yeah. Then he just. Well, here's.
I wouldn't bet what I'm saying. I'm just looking at it from the standpoint of like, yeah, I could see this happening.
It's a very hard schedule. I'm not even talking. I mean, beyond the first maybe 6 weeks of the year, it's a very hard schedule. I think honestly they'll start strong, which I think will be good for a rookie head coach.
Right.
Going up against the Broncos, going up against the Patriots and Dolphins. Dolphins, I guess, will be a really, really tough draw.
Yeah.
Luckily, it's in Seattle.
Right.
I'm not really sure if there's not really a game other than the Jets game and the Falcons game where the Hawks have to go clear across the country.
Yeah.
Generally, the Hawks are one of the more travel teams in the NFL because of that.
I agree with you.
And it seems like a lot of people are coming here. Which I guess is a good thing.
I agree with that.
Seattle's a great place to be. I think a lot of this just depends on how good the Rams are.
Right.
And I think the Hawks and Rams are probably right there in the on the echelon of the NFC West as far as who's gonna be number 2 to the Niners. Because barring a catastrophe, I don't see anyone. Catastrophe for the Niners, great thing for the Seahawks.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah. Barring a catastrophe for the Niners, I don't see anyone unseating them. But let me tell you, I'm excited for this year. We knew who they were playing, obviously, but just putting a date and time and I'm counting 1,
okay,
2, 3 primetime, 4 primetime games.
4, yeah, 4.
Pretty good.
And I think that's a testament to what people will think about this team.
Right. Again, guys, these are raw reactions. These, you listen to this podcast maybe a couple of days out, but we're getting these numbers maybe about 40 minutes ago, and I only barely looked at this. Right.
I know. Right? Yeah. We just want, we
want to be right there with you guys. With the honest, raw reactions, man. Because I know a lot of people look at their schedule and they're like, "Oh my God, this is great." My favorite team is coming. Yeah. Is coming to town. If you're, let's say a Patriots fan.
Sure.
I don't know any Patriots fans, but, but
who knows a Patriots fan?
Yeah, actually, I do know a Patriots fan.
It's random.
It's unfortunate, is what it really is. Yeah, Niko, this is exciting. This, like I said, it's spring Christmas.
It really is. Yeah. I agree with you from that standpoint, and I think that
if the draft wasn't enough.
If the draft wasn't enough, correct.
Right.
I think that the draft starts it all like we talked about. Okay, they've bolstered the defensive line. They've done a few things. Now let's see how it actually comes to fruition. And that starts, listen, you got a new look team. You got a new look attack. I think that if you're the Seahawks, you like that this all starts with the Broncos and the Patriots, 2 teams that in theory, it should be very winnable games. To start this new system.
This is honestly the most ideal 2-game start that the Hawks could have had.
I agree.
Yeah. I mean, even, you want tests early, the Dolphins and Lions. I think those are 2 great tests back to back, followed up by the Giants. I know I'll be October 6th if you guys.
Exactly.
You guys want to hang out with me at Merchants afterwards. I know where I'll be. I'll be probably very sad because I don't believe that the Giants will do well in this game. But that's great for Hawks fans. But that Thursday night game, it seems like there's always a Hawks and Niners game on a Thursday night.
It doesn't seem that way. And that's certainly by design.
Yeah, certainly by design. But those are 2 franchises that are just like not on the same page with each other. Like I can tell you, there's been many times I've seen Niners fans around and just like they're not looking. Seattle's very a very friendly city.
Is it?
Well, Seattle's a very friendly city, but Niners fans they stick out like a sore thumb. You know who else is a Niners fan? Works at KOMO, Gar Swanson.
Oh, how about that?
Yeah, how about that? Yeah,
Didn't know that.
Fan. Yeah, don't hold that against him though.
No,
he's a great guy.
we like Gar.
We like Gar. I'm excited. That Week 10 bye week is going to be huge halfway through the year.
Yeah.
Gosh, this is exciting.
I like the bye, like you said, where it is because it was so early last year. And then by the end of this thing, the injuries were piled up.
Right. But again, for the last 6 on the road, you get those 2 home games sandwiched in between each other with the Packers and Vikings. Who knows what the Vikings could have this year too? I mean, we got potentially JJ McCarthy starting. How great can they be? We'll see.
Right.
They're bringing back essentially the same roster, just plugging in a rookie quarterback. Little side note: I know the Giants are starting the year against Minnesota. So welcome to the league, JJ McCarthy. You have to deal with Cameron and Dexter Lawrence and Brian Burns. So congratulations.
Yeah, welcome to the league. Indeed.
Welcome to the league, indeed. Exactly. Yeah. This is fun. This is good.
I think we talked about this a lot. That you can look at the stretches of games, and like unlike last year, I don't see a stretch where I'm like, boy, they're going to lose like 4 or 5.
No, that's not really a brutal stretch.
I mean, that may end up occurring just by the parity and nature of the NFL. But I would say that this schedule, based on you can't control the opponents, given basically what we learned today was the layouts, the primetime games,
right,
that sort of thing. You can't ask for much more than this.
Right.
I mean, you start at home. Again, it's the NFL, the old adage, they all drive Mercedes or whatever car you like that's expensive. Like they're all pros is the point. But the Broncos and Patriots are probably 2 of your least imposing non-conference games.
More cupcakey.
Sure.
More cupcakey.
It's like the Huskies starting out their schedule with, Weber State and Eastern Michigan.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
You need those tune-up games.
Yeah, and that's you don't see that in the NFL often because it's just kind of everybody's good.
Now we're saying this. Now watch the Hawks lay an egg.
Bronco, they start 0-2 and then they finish like 15-3 or 15-2, whatever it is.
Now you were talking about there's not really a stretch that's really aggressively bad. I mean, and I look at the schedule, there's really not aggressively bad. I mean, like tough teams. Like there was a stretch last year where they had the Browns and the Ravens, back to back. Really tough teams. The only thing I can see that comes close to that is week 8, 9. The bye week is week 10.
Yeah,
and then week 11 it gets Bills, Rams, and then Niners again. But
I can see. No, but at least you're right. At least you get a break there. But that is a really difficult 3-game.
And let's
stretch.
see how good the Falcons are, because then maybe that extends to week 6.
Yeah.
Niners, Falcons, Bills, Rams, buying the Niners again. Who knows?
I'll stick with 10-7 or 11-6. But I think that's really stupid of me. I think it's impossible to know. I think it's impossible to know, especially with a new coaching staff.
I think it's impossible to know, which is why I'm reserving my.
We'll ask you again in like October.
I think the Hawks can win 10 games.
I thought they could have won 10 games last year. They just ran into some weird circumstances like that Bengals game and a couple other ones.
So you just never know. That Bengals game is a good example of something that you just never know.
Never know.
Because that was such an odd game. But also some of the Hawks wins last year were very odd, like that Browns game.
The Eagles game.
Yeah.
The fact that they let the Commanders take them to overtime. You know what I'm saying? Even the Panthers, who were awful, the Hawks won by 10, but it wasn't exactly like in hand, it felt like, until kind of late. I didn't think they were going to lose at any point, but I also wasn't like, all right, on ice,
Like you said, all these guys drive Lambos.
But it's a new era. And how will these guys, the guys that have been here, respond to Mike McDaniel? I almost said Mike McDaniel. Mike McDonald. How will the newcomers, really acclimate? Whether that's the rookies like the Byron Murphys of the world, or the new linebacking core. Remember, that is a whole new linebacker core. Jordan Brooks, Bobby Wagner gone. And really in the last 2 years, if you count other guys that have parted, like a Cody Barton, that's a whole new unit back there. It's going to be really interesting. Are they going to bring Jamal Adams back to play linebacker?
I heard rumors about that.
Yeah, you don't know. He's still a free agent. I mean, at this point, it's more about what team would give him a shot, I suppose. And so, there's a lot of things happening here that the schedule release today lets us daydream, right? It makes us think about those fall days. Not that we would like fast forwarding through summer, but there's nothing quite like football Sunday with the red zone or whatever way you watch on there, right?
Oh, yeah.
And seeing if this is the year of the Hawks, not just get back to the playoffs, but let's be honest with you. Hope springs eternal this time of year. All 32 of those teams are like, yeah, we're going to go to the playoffs. Unless you're like really not that like the Panthers. I don't think the Panthers have much of a chance.
Well, you know the NFC
and I like
South
I like them as a franchise.
The
but...
NFC South is not. I love the colors, by the way. For the Panthers, but the NFC South is not exactly intimidating,
right?
As far as franchise, as far as divisions go.
So yeah, that's the thing, and I think that hope springs eternal for everybody. So it's fun to look at the schedule and wonder what might be.
Yes.
There's no rhyme or reason as to. I mean, listen, to show you how silly my prediction is. You remember this, Najee, the build up to the Russell Wilson returning game against the Broncos. Who gave the Hawks a chance outside Seattle? Nobody.
That's true.
Everybody's like, oh, the Broncos are going to the playoffs. Russ is the savior. He's this. What happened?
It was all good.
And that's not piling on Russ. That guy's dealt with a lot of crap the last couple of years. That's not piling on Russ. It's just to say nobody knows. Even the experts that think they know everything, that certainly know a lot more about football than me and a lot of people out there. But ultimately, you don't know.
No.
I mean, otherwise the Broncos wouldn't have given all that up for us. Like, you just don't know.
And that's why you play the game.
It's why you play the game.
Yes.
But 10-7.
or better. I just
send me to the playoffs. We'll bring Najee.
Let's go.
We'll have a good time in we'll call it New Orleans. Saints are going to the playoffs. I don't know.
I don't know. Who knows?
I was there for New Year's Day last year with the Sugar Bowl.
New Orleans is a great city.
I like New Orleans. It's a cool place.
Yes.
And I have good memories with UW winning there.
What we want is home playoff games at Lumen Field in the cold is what we want.
Yeah.
That's what we
the
really
wind
want.
And cold that the who's in the NFC? The Atlanta Falcons won't be able to handle.
Nope.
I just put 2 NFC South teams in the playoffs. Is that accurate?
I don't know. Here's the thing. If Penix is
that the Cowboys can't handle.
If Michael Penix is a quarterback, they may make the playoffs. So
you know how I feel about Mike.
There you go. Like Mike and the silky do rag.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, there you go.
I was just looking at my video I posted when he landed the national championship and he's like dancing. I'm like, that guy's just such a vibe.
He's such a vibe.
He really is.
His team is such a vibe too. This Hawks team, man. I'm excited. It's gonna be a fun year for them.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be. I think it's going to be really educational to learn what we learn about this team this year. And overall, like we said, the schedule is manageable on the surface as far as like with knowing what we know right now, the information at hand in mid-May, knowing that we knew the opponents, just waiting to see how it laid out and stuff as we talked about now. I mean, you can't ask for much more than what we see here.
I just can imagine all the group text threads starting right now. Like, hey guys, what game are you going to go to? What game are you going to? I can tell you right now, I'm going to at least 2 of them. I can tell you that much.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
It's going to be fun.
I'll be at least 9 of them, maybe more. The home playoff.
Hopefully more. We want home playoff games against the Niners. We can't be going to San Francisco all the time. Please. Gosh. Seriously.
No. Hey, throw that ball to me. I want to see if it shows up in the camera.
Boy, here we go.
I'm ready. That was actually pretty cool.
There you go.
So that was the KOMO Sports End Zone. Happy to break down the NFL schedule. We're going to keep diving into this thing. Until next time, shoot your shot with the Seahawks going to the playoffs. I mean, that just went errant. Najee,
there was no basket there either.
This is always fun, buddy. It was a garbage can.
It was a garbage can. You missed it wide right there.
And short.
But
it was fun, Nash.
It was fun. And I'm excited for this year. And the Hawks fans should be too.
Yeah, well, next time we come back, we'll certainly have more Mariners. We'll have a lot of good stuff. But hey, you don't want to miss it. Thanks for tuning in to the KOMO Sports End Zone.
Bye-bye.